You want to begin?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm good.
I'm going to share my screen with you guys and put the agenda up. Okay, can you see the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, tonight is May 20th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. This is our Facilities Planning Committee meeting. This is our last meeting for the fiscal year. We were doing these at buildings every other month, but of course, because of the COVID-19 epidemic, we have begun to do these online. So we have our minutes that were recorded from the previous meeting, and this leaves us with old business items from the previous meetings. Does anybody want to discuss any of the old business items that we've gone over previously?
I'm good.
Okay. That leaves us the long-range plan update to coincide with the 2021 budget. And Mr. Traska could walk us through this. This is the totals now that we have, this now coincides back with the budget that we have approved via the tentative proposed budget that was just approved in earlier this month. We had this up at the $1.8 million range. Now we've had to scale it back to get it under $750,000. Mr. Traska, I'll let you walk us through this at whichever tab you want to begin.
Sure. I mean, just looking at this tab right now, you can see in roofing work, we scaled it back to 177,000, and in projects, 565,000. HVAC, we have that project at Maple Point we were looking at. We're going to push that off. We'll circle back around Reynolds and see if that can qualify for some type of Giza project. So I know the windows over there that need to be replaced too. And then under parking lots, we really didn't have anything anyway this year because we moved it into the current year we're in now. So we don't need anything for next year. So we can go to roofing tab real quick. You see the arrow underneath the green columns of 2021. We pushed the one project, facilities and purchasing office. We pushed that one out, and we're going to keep the one for Miller. That area over Miller, we've had a lot of leaks, and we got to get that repaired. So that's an important one to do. Just since there's no HVAC, you see I did the same. We can go to that tab.
Tim, do you want to discuss the facilities and purchasing areas DNF, how you pushed that out to 21, 22? Do you want to highlight that or not?
Yeah, I mean, I said you see the arrow there under facilities and purchasing. I pushed that out. So anything I moved, I have an arrow in there now. So if you go back and look, this will be like a history of what we did.
Good. I like how you did that.
HVAC, same thing. If you look at the top, we pushed that one out because maybe we could do something different there instead of just replacing the controls and the univents. So let's see what we can once we get back in the swing of things, we'll get Reynolds on board, get them in the building, and see what we can do. Then parking lots, we had moved a lot of stuff into the 1920 year, so we're looking to get all that work complete this year. So the coming year, 2021, we don't really have anything that's really on the edge of need to be done.
So Tim, is any of this work out to bid right now?
All this has already been out to bid right now.
Okay. So this would be approved at the June meeting, or is there any in the May meeting?
It'll be work to do this summer.
Okay.
And then this is our projects. We have, I have 15,000 there for a new PA system at Fertibar. The big one here is a locker replacement at Maple Point. That's something that's been, on the table for a long time. We like to get that done. $350,000 is the budget number we've been holding for. I have to bid that and see where that really comes in. I'm gonna probably do in the same locker bid. I'll try to put the Sandberg one in there, so maybe we'll get some value by doing more. And then some office upgrades over at Schweitzer. I don't think I'll need to spend $25,000, but that's what we had in there. So I think some of that money will probably be eaten up into locker renovations. I think it's gonna be a little more expensive now. So I tried to look for what we needed and what we could afford. So this is what I came up with.
Tim, can you go back to HVAC?
Sure. So here we have, Maple Point. I had $310,000 in there for for the 2021 and then the 2022 year. We split it, but now I just pushed the whole project out for that year.
What about the droplet issue or the humidity issue at Buck with the leaking ceiling?
Buck, like we've had our engineers in there to review. There's not much we can do to that system until we actually renovate the whole building. Not much to stop it. I mean, we minimize what we can by, you know, the controls that we have in there, but it's just the nature of the system at this point.
Okay.
We have to get, you know, better controls in there and just get that out of there. It's just not a good system to have that cold water running through ceilings.
How about that?
Yeah. Any other comments from the board regarding the projects they see or they think they should see on these tabs?
Tim, I just want to go back to what Marty was talking about as far as the AC at Buck. Well, the presentation we got from Reynolds last time, was that
That's addressed in there. Yes.
okay, that particular issue is addressed in there.
If we move ahead even with the most immediate things, that's one of the top priority items.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
We just got to hope on back to school night it's not humid.
We'll do our best. Like we try to temper it. It's, you know, hopefully it's not real humid. And we last year, like we sent our custodians in just to wipe them all down before everybody got there. So it's you know, you gotta live with what you have, you know.
Mr. Sullivan, back to school night's now February 20th.
Of which year? Of which year?
You tell me.
Okay.
Okay, so that would bring us then to, without any further comments on the long range plan and how that's been scaled back. We also have some money left in the vehicle replacement cycle for 2021. We had $800 and some thousand in there and for new buses, and once that came off the table, well, we still had $155,000 remaining in the line item, and Mr. Traska has needs, and the district has a lot of needs as it relates to vehicles. But Tim, you want to talk about how we can best use that $155,000 in next year's budget with the vehicle replacements?
Yeah, I have. We were looking this year to replace some of our maintenance vehicles. Like truck number 5 is a plow truck. It's a 2002. It needs to be replaced. It's just, you know, the wear and tear of the plowing for you know almost 18 years just really just beats the hell out of the truck as well as the frame and everything else. And we have 2 vans, van number 19 and van number 33. They're both 2007s. We're already, you know, they're only around 100,000 miles on them, but there's just, we're seeing like the rocker panels all going and body and rock going through the vehicles themselves. So unless we want to invest, you know, $6,000 or $7,000 into these, you know, older vans, it's better to replace them. So if we get those 3 vehicles, let's see how the prices come in on that. And if I have any extra money, I'd like to replace one of the vans in transportation. It's a spare vans. We have 2 spare vans in transportation, but we have 18 of them that run every day. So they get, you know, whether it's, you know, brakes have to be done or oil changes, we're always using one of them. And I'll tell you, they're just old, awful vans. I drove one myself when I had to, you know, go drive. They're just embarrassing how beat up they are. So I like to replace, at least get one of those off the road. But that's about it.
Any board comment or suggestions on the vehicles that we're discussing replacing?
I would just like to state that, you know, we put the buses off for, you know, the reasons we put them off for. We're under, at least I'm under the impression that carrying those buses another year may raise our maintenance costs somewhat. You know, I don't know the exact number that's been, you know, budgeted for maintenance, but I would think, you know, any excess money left over out of that 155 will probably need to be eaten up by any maintenance unless we get extremely lucky.
Yeah,
When we're going back to school too. You know?
Yeah, I know. At least one of those buses we were holding, it needs a transmission, and that's $6,000 or $7,000 right there. So we'll definitely use the money.
Put that in the back until you need it.
Any other comments on the vehicle replacement cycle?
No.
Okay, that takes us to the closing of the meeting. We have any other topics from the board members, committee members that they want to bring up at this time?
Yeah, I have one. I'll call it future topic since this is our last meeting.
Yes.
I think, and we kind of finished up with it a little bit at the last meeting, but I think we're getting to the point where we need to either do, I'll call it either a site survey or a feasibility study or something along that line, some type of study. And we should probably solicit bids to see what a new elementary school at Maple Point will cost. Right now we have, there's still cheap money out there. And if we're going to go forward with something like that, we may want to package some of these projects that we've been kicking down the road into a bond and do it all at the same time. So that's what I'm putting out there.
I think that makes sense. I think it's a good idea we've been talking about it.
Right.
Let's take a look at it. See what we can do with that site. See if it's feasible to even put a building there.
And if it is, and we decide we're going to go forward, then this stuff Tim just kicked down the road and kicked other stuff down the road, maybe we do it all at the same time, especially if it's going to be inexpensive money. Still got to get paid back, but it'll be inexpensive money.
I would ask that we do something along those lines before we take a hard look at what we're going to do at Buck.
Yep.
You know, if we're going to, I mean, we talked last meeting. I mean, I think the smallest project that's on the priority list there was the air conditioning. And you had to do, if you're going to do that, you had to do the electrical panel.
Right.
We talked about numbers, anywhere from spending, $1 million to as much as 12 million for maintenance projects and not solving any of the programmatic issues that are at that school. So before we make those decisions, I think we need to know what the future may look like. I think it's a good idea. And if it appears that, it can be done, that may definitely influence what we would think to do at Buck. Because if you're going to put money in Buck as a Neshaminy school, it really needs more towards the top end of the project list than it does the bottom end of the project list.
Yeah, right now we need to weigh the two. We need to get some idea of what a building would cost us, which would encompass that community, Buck, and the St. Mary Langhorne area up there. But before we pour, a couple $100,000 into that building, let's at least know what we're talking about.
We're already
we could certainly do
money
that
in there now. So.
Well, we'd have to get the scope of what we want to get done. You're going to need at least a basic building layout, square footage wise.
Yep.
I would assume we would use the same 900 student spec that we used with Tawanka. That site is probably 900's overall capacity. That's not going to be the operating capacity, that site's going to require, I think, a tighter building. I don't think a spread out building like we have at Tawanka is going to be right for that site. So we're going to need some conceptual ideas of what a footprint's going to look like.
Yeah, what I like about the Tawanka is the fact that it's laid out in that's kind of, well, I'll call it it's not a circle, but a spoke, the pod idea.
Mm-hmm.
And we can maybe take a look at that. Then maybe instead of 3, maybe we only need 2 there. But you know what I mean? Right now it's preliminary.
Well, I think the house concept is the way to go. I don't think we would change from that
Yeah,
concept.
that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, I don't want to get an architect come in with a whole brand new.
Right.
That's
Stay
what-
with that concept, but you might go 3 floors instead of 2 floors and shrink the footprint.
Shrink the whole footprint, right?
Right, shrink the footprint. That would actually be probably cheaper to build.
And it'd be more energy efficient, actually.
Right. So there's a lot of advantages to that. So we need to get some type of scope going. If I'm going back from memory now, this takes us back to 2014. I can't remember who did the original scoping for us when we committed to Tawanka. I think it was Spiesel. Is who we used to do that.
The architect over there.
That rings a bell with me too, Steve.
Right. And they did right by us. They came in, on time, on budget, actually under budget, Market Reynolds. And we got a good working relationship there, but if we have to bid it, we got to bid it.
Well, for an architect, you'd have to put out a request for proposal.
Yeah.
And so let's do that. We'll put a request for proposal together. We'll get some eyes on it, and we'll put it out in the street and get something back to you on that. Okay.
All right, great.
And probably people are going to be hungry for work now too. So time.
Yeah, they will.
As a non-committee member, I just have to ask if Heckman has been a part of any of these discussions, because I keep getting reports that kids have turned it into a playground. There's minimal vandalism, but the police have to go down there and chase kids out pretty regularly. And I think that's a liability for us. And I think it needs to be part of our overall long-range plan when we start talking about elementary schools. Not so much reopening it, but doing something with Oliver Heckman.
Something with that property. I agree with you there, Dave. Yeah.
Or before a charter school tries to buy it, or we end up with some sort of liability issue.
I'm just throwing it out, Dave. One of the things that I've thrown out before, you may not have heard it. It was that maybe at some point, and I'm not saying a definite or whatever, I know that years ago, Council Rock made the Chancellor Street School their administrative offices.
Yes.
So, yeah, so that's always a possibility or something along that lines, dress it up for the community too.
Sure.
The other possibility is, and I took some preliminary steps to investigate this, is the property is actually worth more without the building on it. You're right, Dave, the building's a liability. Depending upon how this discussion proceeds and where we go with a possible future Maple Point project, we might be able to make a deal to have that building brought down very, very cheap. And then it becomes a lot more attractive because you don't have an abatement issue for anybody that would want to buy it. I'm not saying you don't hold on to it, the ground for Marty's idea, but I think what we're doing right now in investigating the future is going to be the linchpin for how we decide to do, with that property as well. I think it all ties itself in together.
Well, it makes sense to me to turn it into administrative offices. I mean, it's, again, I have no idea what that would cost.
Right, either do I, right.
But one of the big issues at Heckman as a school is the lack of parking area.
Right.
If it was administrative offices, that wouldn't really be an issue anymore.
What's attractive to me about that is that, we're still, I don't like getting rid of property because once you get rid of it, you can't get it back. Down here in Lower Bucks, there is no room. That's why we're talking about squeezing a building in on our middle school property. That's what made it attractive to me. Instead of letting the building sit there and rot, we can make use of it, reclaim some of that space up there at Maple Point, get the administration away from, let's say, influence from staff, teachers wandering in and out. There's a lot of pluses to that plan.
Well, just if I bring it back to 1991, when they took Maple Point back from whoever they were renting it to that time, and I don't remember who. Rob probably remembers who they were.
Yes,
Something like that, ETS.
Right. and then they took the administration out of the high school and moved it over to Maple Point, and they had to do that reconstruction, and then they had to change the layout of the school. That bond issue was $23 million. Now, I'm not saying, and that's in 1991 dollars. That's what they spent at Maple Point to redevelop that building into a middle school and move the executive offices over there. There's a lot to move those executive offices out of there. Look, this is very, very preliminary, but I just wanted to throw that number out there as what they spent in 1991. So it's something to think about.
Well, that'll always be taken into consideration.
Oh, yeah,
Once this comes in, everything will be on the table.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and we'll be able to make an informed decision then about what really lies ahead of us.
Right.
Yeah, at least we get direction.
And while we're spending money, there are the field issues at the high school campus. There's issues that hold on, let me just pile it on here. What Maple Point has as far as those fields from the community, Pequessing does not have, and Sandburg does not have. So you take a look at that, and it's probably a small number if we actually deal with the building and a bond.
Right. We get it. It will be next. When do you think we'll talk about the fields, Marty? Next September, October?
Yeah, I think.
Well, they were.
Yeah. Because actually, the fields have been in good shape the last 3 months.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Yeah, for the first time.
Remember when they asked us to give them a rest?
And you know what? Little did we know. Exactly.
Yeah.
Say, did we ever get a return on those guys that were going to give us a bid on the fields?
We did. They want a bid, but there's a report we have.
Yeah, report on that.
Administratively, we have that report, and we're going to share that with you. The timing was to come up last month, and the timing was just very bad to talk about that on the heels of the budget crisis that we were looking at the time. So we just held that just because I didn't want it to get killed, before I got it out of my mouth.
I'm just remembering that I wasn't too keen on actually paying them to do a survey, but since we did,
Well, they did it pretty cheap.
Yeah, it was like 7,500. So.
Yeah.
And Rob, I just want to let you know, we have not forgotten about the press box, the bathrooms, and the running track.
I'm still looking at Parentano Field on the front
All
lawn.
right, we're working on it.
All right. That pretty much takes us to the end of the other topics or
Okay.
future topics. We have the potential for any public comment. Mr. Stanley, do you want to lead us through that?
Certainly. If anybody wants to make a comment, please just use the raise your hand feature, which can be found at the bottom under, I think it's under participants on most people's screens. Have any takers? Going once, going twice. I think that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, tonight. And again, our next meeting is not yet scheduled, so I'll work with the committee to put that on the schedule. And we'll get back to hopefully visiting the campuses. The last one we should have gone to is Fertibar, so that's the first one we want to get to coming out of the gate next year.
Okay.
Okay.